After Israel's crushing victory over Iran in the latest exchange of fighting between the Jewish state and the Ayatollah regime, the news arrived. Trump announced that the agreement will be signed today, or no later than tomorrow, and made it clear when everything calms down, the United States will collect the uranium and destroy it. Pakistan announced that tomorrow the agreement will be signed digitally. Iran, for its part, declared that it will change and charge ships in the Strait of Hormuz for passing. So, after President Trump announced that the agreement is expected to be signed today, senior officials in Israel are expressing concerns over the details of this emerging deal, a deal that, according to reports, does not touch the most sensitive security issues for Israel. And in the IDF, they assessed that Mustafa Khamenei approved the text for the Supreme Council of Iran. So, what stands behind this agreement? All the details are coming now. And the Islamic Axis is still here. Today, we will dive into the Iranian grip on Lebanon. Against the backdrop of the emerging agreement with the United States of America, senior military officials of the Islamic Republic are involved in Hezbollah's command and in the organization's decision-making. The IDF exposes operational maps in southern Lebanon for the conquest of Israel, which were found inside tunnels of the Hezbollah terrorist organization beneath the Beaufort Ridge. And on top of all of this, will we see Mustafa Khamenei at his father's funeral? It seems that Khamenei is coming out of the freezer. Iran published the funeral route, and against the backdrop of the ceasefire, he is supposed to emerge. I'm Yair Pinto. With me is Mati Shoshani. We're here in Boots on the Ground. We bring you the full truth about what's happening here in Israel and the full truth about what's happening in our neighborhood, the Middle East. And today is June 14th. So let's begin. Because the Memorandum of Understanding with Iran is not the final word. After it, negotiations are supposed to begin and continue for 60 days. But from our experience, we know that negotiations on nuclear issues, for example, during the Obama administration, can last more than a year and a half. So this is still far from the end of the story. Although, it must be said that under Trump, reality feels like everything is on speed. Everything is happening fast and slow at the same time. United States President Donald Trump announced on Saturday that tomorrow the signing of the framework agreement with Iran will take place, a memorandum of understanding that will open the future negotiations for 60 days on the nuclear program. And alongside the opening of the Strait of Hormuz and the removal of the American blockade on the Iranian ports, his remarks came shortly after the mediator Pakistan also announced that a digital signing ceremony is expected to take place tomorrow, meaning the two sides will sign online. But from Trump's markets and remarks, it was not made clear whether that's indeed how it will be carried out. Coincidentally, or not, tomorrow is also the day that Trump will celebrate his 80th birthday, amongst other things, with UFC fighters on the White House lawn. So, let's stop for just a moment and wish the President of the United States a happy birthday. Happy birthday, Donald Trump, from us here at the TBN Israel team and Boots on the Ground. May God bless you, and every good thing, may you always seek Him to make the decisions. And then, on the other side, Iran itself has still not confirmed that the agreement will be signed tomorrow, but they said that it could happen in the coming days. The Revolutionary Guards denied this evening that the agreement will be signed tomorrow. In a post on Telegram that is associated with them, criticism was directed at Trump's unusual insistence on signing the agreement specifically tomorrow, and they mentioned, of course, that it is his birthday. Trump claimed in a post that he published this evening that when everything is calm, the United States will collect the enriched uranium and destroy it. He insisted that unlike the original nuclear agreement, Iran will not receive funds as part of the signing of the initial Memorandum of Understanding. He added that he expects to work with Iran deep into the future. Alongside that, he admitted that there may be hurdles down the road in the future negotiations over the final nuclear agreement between the two sides. Trump also threatened that if there is no quick solution, the United States still has an ultimate alternative, but expressed hope that there will never again be a need for another attack against Iran. So, what is this memorandum of understanding? The agreement expected to be signed tomorrow is not a final peace agreement. It is also not an agreement for the immediate dismantling of the Iranian nuclear program. It is a short memorandum of understanding. Iranian Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi said that it will be shorter than 2 pages, and according to reports, it will extend the ceasefire by 60 days. During this period, Iran will remove its threat to attack ships that are crossing the Strait of Hormuz and will allow them to move freely through the trade route through which, before the war, about 1/5 of the global oil supply used to pass. In return, the United States will remove its blockade on the Iranian ports, and at the same time, the sides will conduct negotiations on a final agreement centered on restrictions on the Iranian nuclear program. We are sure that you are flooded with reports from all news channels reporting more and more leaks and rumors about this agreement that supposedly was already signed. This is an endless loop of headlines, some of them based on Iranian leaks and on information that does not always reflect the truth. United States President Donald Trump came out against Iran, claiming that the terms leaked to the media are not connected at all to the written understandings. Trump called the Iranian statements weak and pathetic and emphasized that they do not resemble the truth. I'm pretty sure that he knows what he's talking about because at the end of the day, he's the one signing this agreement and seeing the full picture. In addition, he commended the drone strike against the Indian ships. He condemned it. And Pakistan's foreign ministry announced that the signing ceremony will take place tomorrow in Islamabad, Pakistan, but the two sides will sign online and remotely. The spokesman for Iran's foreign ministry claimed that the funds frozen by the United States will be released as part of the agreement and that Tehran will maintain its control over the Strait of Hormuz. Iran spread many rumors regarding the details of this emerging agreement. And now, the United States President Donald Trump is furious about it. Trump announced, "This is all fake news. They should get their act together and fast." The authorities in Tehran announced that the farewell ceremonies for the Supreme Leader Ayatollah Ali Khamenei, who was eliminated in Operation War of the Lion, will continue for 5 days and will spread across Tehran, Qom, and Mashhad until the burial at the Imam Razeh compound. Today, we will also bring you the person standing behind the hard line of the Revolutionary Guards. The new commander of the Revolutionary Guards, Ahmed Vahidi, has in recent months become one of the most influential power centers in Tehran, and he is leading a very tough line against the United States of America. Iranian and Arab sources claim that Vahidi is pushing for the continuation of the military pressure, and within that also pushed for fire towards Israel as a response to the attack on Hezbollah. Hezbollah is on the edge of the abyss. What do you think? Let me know in the comments what will happen soon, because we will bring you the signals that alarmed Tehran, caused the Iranians to lose control, and try to protect the Hezbollah terrorist organization from being defeated militarily by the IDF. So the Iranian military figures who are in Lebanon continue to try to strengthen Hezbollah under the radar of the government in the land of the Cedars, which is Lebanon. So you have Iranian officials that are supporting the terrorist organization still. Those Iranian military figures stationed in Lebanon are the ones reflecting to the regime in Tehran Hezbollah's bad condition and its needs, and they're working to draw more Iranian involvement inside Lebanon. In southern Lebanon, forces of the IDF's 36th Division operating on the Beaufort Ridge continue to expose and destroy Hezbollah's underground tunnel network. And during the activity, maps were found on the walls of one of the routes which according to the IDF illustrate the operational importance of the area and the threat that it poses to the communities of the north. So I'm Yair Pinto, with me is Mati Shoshani. We are here on Boots on the Ground to bring you the full truth about what's happening here in Israel and about the war against the Revolutionary Guards in Iran, which is the head of the crumbling axis of evil in the Middle East. And 1 second before we begin, I want to call on you to keep spreading the truth, share our content with as many people as possible, click on the subscribe button, and most importantly, do not forget to look for me, Yair Pinto, and Mati Shoshani on our social media accounts to get our view through our eyes of what it's like to live here in Israel under this war. So, our senior Middle East correspondent Mati Shoshani is with us, and Mati, is the Memorandum of Understanding with Iran really not the final word? Is the Memorandum of Understanding with Iran really not the final word? Because on the one hand, this is a bad agreement. But on the other hand, perhaps also an unexpected opportunity. The American-Iranian deal that is mediated by Qatar and by Pakistan gives the Ayatollah regime an economic lifeline in the short term, and will probably also bring more rounds of fighting with Tehran and its proxies in the future. But on the other hand, could the agreement that sidelines Israel actually pave the way for an arrangement in Lebanon and perhaps even for the fall of the Ayatollah regime in Iran?
Look, first of all, good day, Shavua Tov, Happy New Week, in Israel at least. And I think this is a complicated situation, as always. If anyone was expecting a perfect deal with Iran, well, that's just aspirational. Think it's not realistic. Let's talk about what is realistic. There were two really big items on the table related to Iran. Open the Strait of Hormuz, and as fast as possible. Two, remove the nuclear bomb from the equation. Now, let me explain this. Israel is not the only party of interest in this entire equation. And the U.S. is not only thinking about a deal between the U.S. and Iran. There's a whole bunch of countries that rely on the U.S. to carry out this deal. The Gulf states, the ones that are close to the U.S., the UAE, the Saudis, the Qataris, the Omanis, they're all looking by. And they want to see if the U.S., which is their ally, will be able to open up the Strait of Hormuz to them. Two, for the U.S., there's a need for a public win. To be able to say, for the first time in over 30 years, that the U.S. was able to start and end a war in a short amount of time will be a huge achievement for President Trump, and that's not an understatement. Enormous PR achievement, enormous win on both military and diplomatic side. That needs to be said. Now, is the agreement perfect? No. And let me tell you something, Yair, it was never going to be a perfect agreement. The gaps between Iran and the U.S. require this to be an agreement that Israel forever would not be fully happy with. The only agreement that Israel would be happy with, let's be honest here for just a second, would be an agreement in which the Ayatollahs and the IRGC say, we repent for our evil ways, we're resigning and we'll be retiring to the mountains to be replaced with the democracy that loves peace. That would be the only agreement that Israel would be happy with. And since that is not on the table, at least not now.
I don't think that's happening anytime soon, Marty.
Exactly. So assuming that that's not the case right now, any agreement, and this needs to be said, any agreement will be an agreement that Israel isn't happy with because Iran is an existential threat for Israel, because Iran is diametrically opposed on ideological, on a religious level to the state of Israel. What do we need from here? What are our necessitated wins from this agreement? We need to make sure that they don't pursue a bomb. The U.S. needs them to open up the Strait of Hormuz. We need to make sure they stop funding proxies. That's it. Everything else is icing on the cake, Yael. And again, we need to say this again. Tomorrow, the next day, and in 10 years, unless the regime is changed in Iran, they're going to continue to be our enemies. That's not going anywhere. That's not changing. We'll still have to build up our army to fight against Iran. We'll still have to allocate assets within the Mossad to fight against Iran. That's not changing. But for the United States, this is a big win. For them to take away the nuclear capability from them, enormous win. For them to open up the Strait of Hormuz, again, an enormous win at the expense of Iran and the friends of Iran. So we don't need to look for something perfect. We need to look for the best agreement we can have now and then continue to be vigilant in the years to come.
Well, definitely. And Mati, as you said, many people are also very vehemently against this approaching agreement. But just yesterday, the White House wrote that one of the goals right now is to cut off Iran's support for the terrorist proxies. CENTCOM announced that the recent strikes hit the surveillance, the communications, and the air defensive systems that threaten the American forces and the commercial ships. So will this give Israel more aerial freedom of action against the Hezbollah terrorist organization in Lebanon? What about that?
Probably not, Yael. That's sort of like the challenge here, is that whatever this agreement ends up being, it's likely going to include some kind of ceasefire also in Lebanon. And you really, when you think about it from the American perspective, it's sort of understandable. The war against Hezbollah, and again, we need to be honest here, even though we're Israelis that are active in the IDF, we need to look at this also from an American perspective. Let's talk about this for just a second. If the US gave Israel 3 more months to fight against Hezbollah, will Hezbollah still exist in Lebanon? The answer is probably.
Yes.
Hezbollah would still probably exist. If the US gave Israel 6 months in Lebanon and Gaza and to strike in Iran, Iran as the regime would still exist. Hezbollah would still, for the most part, exist in Lebanon. It's a terrorist organization embedded into the population. And from a US perspective, from the Trump White House perspective, if they want to have an agreement at one point or another that says we're cutting this war, we're ending this conflict, Israel will have to stop the war in Lebanon against Hezbollah, whether or not we finished working against the Hezbollah terrorist organization. That's the simple reality of asymmetrical warfare. And because of that, Israel, and we've seen this, we've seized the opportunity to really strike strongly against Hezbollah in recent weeks. We've caused them a lot of damage. We continue to strike. We continue holding on to terrain. I think the most likely scenario when it relates to Lebanon and Hezbollah is a regional agreement under which there's some kind of staggered process where Israel falls back to some kind of defensive line, wherever it is, in the Litani River or elsewhere. And then maybe at some point when Hezbollah is semi-disarmed, the Lebanese army is stronger, then Israel possibly falls back even farther to another defensive line. People like to frame this as if it's bad for Israel. In reality, it isn't. There is no, let me say this differently. Israel should not be aspiring to take over Lebanon, the country. That's not an outcome that would be good for Israel. Definitely not in the long term.
I think nobody in Israel is aspiring to take over Lebanon. The aspiration is to make sure that the citizens of the North are safe, not just today, but also next year or in 2 years from now, and dismantle the terrorist organization that is actively stating that their goal is to annihilate Israel and to carry out attacks against Israel, right?
Yeah, yes, but it's complicated because some of the logical reasoning behind Israel pushing farther and farther north into Lebanon is that we want to push back on Hezbollah and retreat Hezbollah from their positions, et cetera, et cetera. And the farther you push in, the more Hezbollah infrastructure you find. The farther you push in, the more Hezbollah uses longer range weapons to fire on Israel. It's this almost never-ending game. And if you want to borrow from what's happening in the war between the Ukraine and Russia to a smaller scale, it's not the same scale of armed forces in size and volume and range. Look, the Ukrainians are using off-the-shelf, almost off-the-shelf components to strike more than 1,000 miles into Russian territory, using drones that are, many of them, not much bigger than my arm span. And when you take that into consideration, there is no scenario where Israel can push Hezbollah to the point where they stop threatening Israel without taking over most of Lebanon. And since we're not planning to do that, an agreement where Hezbollah is committed on behalf of Iran and on behalf of the Lebanese government to stop fighting against Israel, that might be the best that we can get right now. That's simply the reality we're facing, Yael.
Yeah, definitely. And do you think that Israel in the near future, because of this agreement, will actually withdraw its forces, or that's going to be like a different conversation altogether? From Lebanon, I'm talking about.
I don't think altogether. I think what the ceasefire agreement will include, and this is assumptions right now. There are no clear publications on this topic from anyone. Israel will likely withdraw to some kind of defensive line that still holds on to territory in Lebanon. I'm guessing it's somewhere in the middle between farther north than what we had before this last war broke out, and south of the Bufol range or ridge that we're holding right now. Somewhere where there's a geographical advantage, where we have outposts that can sort of control the territory, and it's far enough from the border, so the close range anti-tank, let's call it ballistic, short-range rockets, short-range drones, etc., don't threaten the northern communities of Israel, but it would not be at the international border. I think it needs to be very, very clear that Israel and the IDF are not planning to come back to the international border until there's a significant force that can prevent Hezbollah from coming to our border. That's just an obvious reality here.
Well, thank you very much, Mati, for this analysis. And again, every day we'll know more about the situation, and we're going to come to you with another update in just a few hours tonight. So if you want to know what's happening in the Middle East, in Israel, in this war against Iran, make sure to hit the subscribe button on TBN Israel. And if you want to see life in Israel through our eyes, behind the scenes, look for Mati Shoshani. That's this guy that's with us here now, and Yair Pinto on our social media accounts. And keep praying for the situation. Now let's get back to the news. But as missiles once again fall all across Israel from Iran, Hezbollah, and other enemies of the Jewish state, many people are asking how they can stand with Israel in a meaningful way. The answer is simple. Help us rebuild. Yes, now is the time, and we invite you to take part in something real, something rooted in the land and in our hearts. The Rebuild Israel campaign continues. It's bringing life back to Israel's north. So along Israel's northern border, an area marked by war, displacement, and loss, we are planting an apple orchard, not as a symbol for a single moment, but as part of a long-term commitment to restore what was damaged and strengthen Israel's future. At a time when Israel is under attack, planting trees is a powerful declaration. We are still here. We are rebuilding. We are growing. We're not going anywhere, because God promised this land to the people of Israel, and together, you and us, we can help it flourish once again. So this apple orchard is more than just agriculture. It creates jobs for local families. It helps communities return and rebuild. And it sends a clear message to the people of Israel: you are not alone. So when you donate, you're not just giving, you're rebuilding. Your support puts trees on the ground, it restores livelihoods, and transforms a land that is scarred by war into a land that grows again. This is how renewal takes root. This is how Israel rebuilds after war. So stand with Israel today. Plant hope, plant a tree, restore the north. You can do that by going to tbn.org/rebuildisrael. Again, that's tbn.org/rebuildisrael. Or you can call 800-804-7895. Again, that's 800-804-7895. You can rebuild the land, you can plant a tree, and you can bless the future of Israel. Now let's get back to the news, because 2 UAVs crossed from Lebanon over the weekend and fell inside Israeli territory. One in a military area and one near the border. And at the same time, the IDF eliminated 7 Hezbollah terrorists who are operating inside an underground route in southern Lebanon. And in the Bufol tunnels, the operational maps, the ammunitions, the mortars, the combat equipment, and the living areas were discovered. All of it built over years beneath the ground. All of this is happening while Washington, Tehran, and Islamabad, Pakistan, are talking about the possible signing of an agreement that's supposed to open the Strait of Hormuz and extend the ceasefire. So, what's really about to happen here? An agreement that calms the region, or an agreement that gives Iran another 60 days to breathe, reorganize, and test where Israel will bend? Because while the headlines talk about a digital signing of this agreement, a short memorandum of understanding, and the immediate opening of Hormuz, the ground is telling a much less quiet story. In southern Lebanon, the IDF continues to dismantle Hezbollah's layers of defense, not only forward positions, not only weapons depots above ground, but also underground infrastructure built to allow the organization to survive even under Israeli Air Force strikes. Inside one of the routes where Hezbollah terrorists were operating, the forces found AK-47 rifles, military equipment, launch positions, weapons, ammunition, mortars, and food supplies. This is not a temporary hideout. This is a combat system. In the area of the Beaufort Ridge, the picture is even broader. Forces of the 36th Division continue to clear and destroy Hezbollah's tunnel network. And according to the IDF, this underground infrastructure was built and maintained with Iranian assistance and funding. Inside the tunnels, maps were found drawn on the walls, maps that show how Hezbollah viewed the area, how it planned to control it, and how it treated the communities of northern Israel as part of an operational plan. In other words, while outside people are talking about arrangements, underground there is proof of why Israel cannot really rely only on paper, because the Beaufort Ridge in South Lebanon is not just another hill. It is a point that overlooks the whole area, controls the routes, and carries historical and military meaning going back decades in the First Lebanon War. This fortress became a symbol of price and control. Now, once again, whoever holds the highest understands what's happening beneath it. Movement, tunnels, smuggling routes, firing positions, and infrastructure designed to allow Hezbollah to keep fighting even after the villages around it are evacuated. And this is exactly what worries Israel, because inside the emerging agreement, according to the details that have been published, the agreement is not a final peace agreement itself. It is just a short memorandum of understanding meant to extend the current ceasefire by an extra 60 days. During this period, Iran is supposed to remove the threat against the ships in the Strait of Hormuz, while the United States is supposed to remove the blockade on the Iranian ports. And the sides are supposed to begin technical discussions and negotiations on the future of the nuclear agreement. On paper, that sounds like de-escalation. On the ground, it looks like freezing the problem instead of actually solving it. Trump presents the agreement as a major achievement. He says that the Strait of Hormuz will be opened immediately, that Iran no longer wants nuclear weapons, and that when everything is calm, the United States will enter, collect the enriched uranium and the nuclear materials, dilute it, or destroy it. But Iran is speaking differently. Iran has still not confirmed with certainty that the signing will take place today. Sources affiliated with the Revolutionary Guards claim that the text is not closed and that there is suspicion that Trump is trying to turn the signing date into a personal political event, significantly on his birthday. This gap matters because if Washington is selling the agreement as one that begins nuclear dismantlement, but Iran is selling it as only a temporary ceasefire, then someone here is leaving ambiguity on purpose. That ambiguity allows each side to speak to its own audience. Trump will say that he forced Iran to bend. The Iranians will say that they held out, kept their principles, and reopened a path for themselves to remove the economic pressure. The nuclear question remains at the heart of the concerns. Iran is believed to hold a large amount of uranium enriched to 60%, material that is very close to a weapons-grade enrichment level. According to reports, some of that material is buried deep in underground facilities, including in Isfahan, after the strikes in the recent wars. In addition, it was reported that Iran worked to seal tunnels and entrances around the uranium stockpiles through deliberate collapsing and mining, which would make both a future American operation and an agreed removal of the material very difficult. In other words, even if Trump says we will collect it and destroy it, the operational question still stands. Who enters, when, where, under what level of supervision, and with what Iranian consent? This is not a box that can be taken out of a warehouse, simply. This is sensitive material buried deep inside a hostile country after a war with the Revolutionary Guards trying to rebuild its deterrence. Israel looks at this and sees three major holes. The first is the nuclear issue. There is still no certainty that the uranium will leave Iran or be destroyed in a way that can be verified. The second is the ballistic missiles. It's not clear whether there is any real restriction on missiles production, their rebuilding, or launched stockpiles. The third is the proxies. Hezbollah, the Houthis, and the militias in Iraq do not disappear because of a digital signature. They are part of Iran's power system, and they're exactly the tools that Iran activates when it wants to apply pressure without admitting that it is applying additional pressure. And this is where Ahmed Vahidi enters the picture, the commander of the Revolutionary Guards. According to reports, he has become one of the most powerful figures in Tehran recently. He pushed for a hard line against the United States, opposed early concessions, and supports the launch of ballistic missiles towards Israel after the strike in the Dahya in Beirut, in Lebanon. So different sources claim that he managed to convince Iran's Supreme National Security Council to approve the strikes, even though more moderate officials feared that this would endanger the agreement with Washington. Vahidi is not a marginal figure. He's one of the founders of the Revolutionary Guards, was involved in the establishment of the Quds forces, served as a defense minister and the interior minister, and has been wanted for years in connection with the bombing of the Jewish community centers in Buenos Aires, Argentina, where 85 people were murdered. Now, after many senior Iranian officials were hit during this war, he has gained even more power. And if the man leading the military line is also the man keeping Hezbollah, Hormuz, and the missiles at the top of the priority list, then this agreement enters an initial struggle inside Iran itself, not only negotiations with America. And if you want to understand the Middle East in real time and what's happening in Israel without the slogans and the big headlines, make sure to hit the subscribe button here on TBN Israel so you never miss another update of our boots on the ground reports, where we come from Israel and share what's happening here. So, in the Strait of Hormuz, Iran is trying to rewrite reality. Trump says that the strait will open to everyone immediately after the agreement. Iran says it will continue to charge payments for services in the strait. This is not only a question of money, it is a question of control. Because if Iran manages to turn a natural shipping lane through which a massive share of the world's energy passes into a passage that it manages and taxes, it has received an international bargaining chip. Not a missile, not a centrifuge, but a hand on the oil valve. The United States opposes such charge. From its point of view, freedom of navigation in Hormuz is a red line. But here too, there is a gap between the declaration and reality. If the agreement allows Iran to call it services instead of transit fees, and allows it to maintain an administrative grip on the passage, then Tehran will be able to see this as a victory. It will say, we stood against America, opened the strait on our terms, and received recognition of our power. In the meantime, Lebanon is becoming the test arena of the agreement. Iran wants to link the understanding with Washington to the end of operations in Lebanon. The Iranian foreign minister has already claimed that the meaning of ending the war in Lebanon is an Israeli withdrawal from southern Lebanon. Israel rejects this. Defense Minister Israel Katz made clear that there will be no withdrawal from the security zone in southern Lebanon. And in Jerusalem, they emphasized that Israel's freedom of action will be preserved against every immediate or developing threat. The Americans, according to the reports, are trying to separate the issues. They do not want to give Hezbollah guarantees through the agreement with Iran. They're talking about the withdrawal of Hezbollah terrorists from south of the Litani River, handing over positions to the Lebanese army, stopping Houthi attacks in the Red Sea, and beginning the disarmament of militias in Iraq. In other words, Washington understands that the nuclear issue is only one head of the octopus. The arms are in Lebanon, Yemen, Iraq, and at sea. But the question is who will enforce it. For years, every agreement in Lebanon sounded good on paper. Southern Lebanon was supposed to be free of militias, free of terrorists. The Lebanese army was supposed to be the only sovereign force. Hezbollah was supposed to be pushed north. In practice, the Iranians built tunnels, funded infrastructure, brought in equipment, trained terrorists, and turned entire villages into combat zones. That's why Israel does not measure the agreement by its wordings. It measures it by what's happening underground beneath the houses and along the Litani River line. In Israel, there is an assessment that Hezbollah may try to challenge the ceasefire precisely before the signing. The 2 UAVs that fell over the weekend could be part of that same test. Not a major attack, but a small stab, an attempt to see whether Israel responds in Beirut, whether it stands and stays at the border, or whether the Americans try to restrain it in order not to endanger the agreement with Iran. This is exactly the dilemma that Hezbollah likes to create. An action small enough not to look like war, but dangerous enough to change the equation. And at the same time, there are reports that Hezbollah is sending distress signals to Iran. If this is true, it explains why Tehran is so insistent on inserting Lebanon into the agreement. Hezbollah has taken a severe blow. The IDF has hit command posts, infrastructure, tunnels, commanders, fire arrays, and its ability to remain south of the Litani River without paying a price. In southern Lebanon, Israel has accumulated the bargaining chips on the ground. Not only the destruction of military assets, but control over points that force the other side to think twice before returning to the same plane. Now comes the test of Israel's cabinet, the cabinet of Israel. Does Israel allow the agreement to move forward, keep its power for a case of violation, and use the 60 days to deepen the damage to Hezbollah and Iranian infrastructure in the area? Or does it identify the agreement as an immediate danger and try to change reality before the document locks it in? This is not a simple decision, because on the one hand, continuing a direct war against Iran and against its proxies could ignite the entire region once more. On the other hand, stopping too early could allow the Iranian regime to raise its head, unfreeze its funds, rebuild missiles, strengthen Hezbollah, and sell the world a picture of victory after surviving American and Israeli pressure. It has to be said clearly, a bad agreement does not always look bad on the day that it's signed. Sometimes it looks orderly, it looks diplomatic, even calming. The problem appears 2 months later, when the money begins to move, when the headquarters go back to work, when not all of the tunnels have been destroyed, and when the other side uses the time to prepare for the next round of fighting. And that's why the coming hours matter, because if the signing takes place, the world will see a ceremony. Israel will look at the ground, at the Beaufort, at the Litani, at Hormuz, at the uranium stockpiles, at the UAVs, at Vahidi, at Hezbollah, and at the question of whether Iran is really giving up power or only changing the methods. The emerging agreement could open Hormuz, but it does not close the account with Iran. Will the next 60 days be a window for calm, or the time in which the axis of evil tries to rebuild itself again? So keep spreading the truth, follow us, and most importantly, do not forget to click on the subscribe button so that you stay tuned to the truth in real time and never miss another update of Boots on the Ground. Keep looking for us, Mati Shoshani and Yair Pinto, on our social media accounts to see life in Israel through our eyes. And the best thing that you can do now, seriously, is pray. Okay, let's pray, first of all, for Trump to have a happy birthday and for God to lead him in this next year and to bless him and his family. Let's pray for all the U.S. personnel that are involved in the negotiations. Let's pray also for our enemies, that God will affect their decisions, that they will make the godly decisions in this situation. Let's pray for the IDF soldiers in South Lebanon that are fighting terrorists now, for their safety and for their family. And keep praying for the peace of Jerusalem.